Good morning, friends. Welcome to Dream Big Today. I'm so glad that you're here with me, and I just got a question for you. What would you think if you had to live on leftovers wherever you moved to? You've picked up and left your home that you've known. You get to the new location, don't really know what it's all about yet. It's foreign. And then you find, I gotta live on leftovers. And I gotta go find them. We're gonna dig into Ruth today, one of the greatest books in the Bible. Well, I guess there is 65 other great books in the Bible too. So the whole Bible is so jam-packed with great stuff. But today we get to talk about redeemed and Ruth and Boaz and Naomi and all of that stuff. We just finished our retreat this weekend in Norman, Oklahoma about redeemed. And so here we go. Just perfect that we get to continue flowing into Ruth today. And so let's get started. If you put your prayer requests and all that kind of stuff in, I'm gonna get started in Ruth. Can't wait. We started with Ruth yesterday, chapter 1. Now we're in chapter 2 through 4 of Ruth. So the interesting thing, I mean, this is simple, but it's kind of fun. Is I heard a Hebrew teacher talking about Ruth this morning, and he called her name Root, and they leave the H off for the TH sound. It's Root, and whenever I had to stop and go back and listen to see what he said, but then as I'm digging in, some of these little things I dug into to see, because I've read the story over and over again. It's a love story. It's a love story between Ruth and her mother-in-law, Ruth and Boaz, and Jesus. So here we go. It says, now there was a wealthy and influential man in Bethlehem named Boaz, who was a relative of Naomi's husband Elimelech. Now, they're starting out by telling us the connection. But, see, Ruth and Naomi didn't have any idea that this connection was getting ready to be made. We are made aware of it by the beginning of the story, so we can be watching like we're watching a good show or reading this good book, and we get all of the scenes set as we get ready to go into it. Then one day they've moved, they're there, and just this day, Ruth the Moabite, and lets us know her race, tells Naomi, let me go out into the harvest fields to pick up the stalks of grain left behind by anyone who is kind enough to let me do it. Now, she was a Gentile, but she had married Naomi's son, and Naomi was a Jew. So now then, she has been with Naomi enough to know what they do. They leave a little bit of grain in the field around the outside edges. Just look at it as a picture frame. And depending on who it is, they might have a wide picture frame or a smaller picture frame, but they always have a frame around the fields for the poor and needy to come get something to eat. And what a picture of kindness of those that are well off, that are still giving to the poor, and saying kind enough to let me do it. That's grace. They didn't deserve it, but they were able to go get it. It wasn't brought to them, handed to them on a silver platter. They had to actually go. So sometimes getting your leftovers is an effort. You have to actively participate in that. Naomi said, okay, my daughter. This is where this shifts a little bit, because she has been calling her daughter-in-law up to this point. Now then, that changes. Now she's identified as my daughter, and that's endearing. That's just precious to now then you feel like we've had a horrible life. Your husband died, my husband died, sister-in-law left because her husband died. Now we're in a foreign country, and now you're calling me your daughter. We are together. And then Ruth went out to gather the grain. Next sentence says, as it happened. As it happened, she found herself in the field that belonged to Boaz, relative of father-in-law. Now, still, she doesn't know this. This is behind the scenes, things that we're reading that they didn't know. Naomi, of course, doesn't know, but God always provides. He's always in the story. Naomi didn't ever think about that, but as it happened, that's something to remember when you're seeing and reading through the Bible. When you see a statement like that, it's not a coincidence. They were actively doing life in obedience. Ruth was in obedience with Naomi. Naomi, although she was bitter whenever all of this happened, she's softening up because of grace, because of God's grace. And so things as it happened only happens because of God's grace. He was directing her to the right place, to the right people, at the right time. And this right time just happened to be the barley harvest. Just happened to be the time that the crops were being picked. They didn't come at the time that it would have been nothing there to eat. This was a time, let me read my note, of famine, when the family had left the promised land and went to Moab. Boaz stayed behind, and God provided for him, so then he would be able to provide for them. Because what do we learn at the end of this story? We see the genealogy of Jesus. So sometimes we justify wrong choices because of difficult circumstances. The people of Bethlehem had not perished from hunger. And so she found herself, well, it wasn't just an accident. There's no accidents in the kingdom of heaven. She was in Boaz's field. How awesome is that? And then, while she was there, Boaz arrived and greeted the harvesters, saying, "The Lord be with you." And the harvesters said, "The Lord bless you." So another important statement. The Lord be with you. This is redemption. The purpose of redemption is so you can experience the blessing. So look at the Lord be with you, and then they said, "The Lord bless you." So the Lord was with Boaz, and he was blessed, as well as them being blessed that was in his field. It's a ripple effect of blessings. Whenever we walk in obedience and we know who we serve, then people are watching, just like people were watching Ruth. As she goes out, nobody knows her, although they've heard about her. And Boaz, whenever he's asked about her, that is, oh my goodness, that's must be my relative's wife. They tell him who she is, and they say she's been a hard worker. Well, somebody's always watching you. They see what you're doing. They see how you act, even when you don't know They're watching you. They're watching you. They're listening to the words you speak. Are your words that you speak encouraging, or is it bitter? Are you speaking words like Mara? Are you bitter? Are you speaking words like Ruth and just let me go harvest for you, because now you're my mom. You called me that my daughter. So Boaz he sees a Gentile woman utilizing the Torah, because she must know about harvesting the outside edge. That's where she's at. How does a Gentile know that unless they've been taught? Because this is a means for the poor to gather food. How did she know that? She's special. She's special. So he tells her, and he calls her, listen, my daughter, stay with us. Because he knows that a young, single woman like her, very pretty, I'm sure that it didn't matter what this girl put on, she looked beautiful. But there would be other eyes on her too, because that is the world we live in. There are eyes lusting at everything that looks pretty, looks good, is something desirable. He says, stay right here. That's another way of being redeemed. He's there to be the protector. And as we find out, he is the kinsman redeemer, because he is Amalek's cousin. And so, fun thing is that I have to go fast through this. Man, I want to just break every single thing apart. But it's really hard to with all of our good stuff. I'm hoping that you're reading all of it. But whenever he tells her to stay there, he also tells her, and when you are thirsty, help yourself to the water that they have drawn. She doesn't even have to stop and leave the field to go wherever in the world the well was at. Probably wasn't close. Probably was another trek. She'd leave, and if she had to leave, the harvest was going on, and possibly some other hungry people would come in and take her place, and she would even be behind them. And then the gathering would even be more meager than it was before. So they're also giving her water, refreshment. Drink from my well. Oh my goodness, that's another teaching all in itself. Ruth fell at his feet and thanked him. She immediately thanked him. She didn't even, she had probably wondered all day long about just, I hope I can make it through this hot sun. Well, maybe she didn't. Maybe she just thought, I know my mother's Lord, and he will take care of me. Maybe that was in her thoughts, because she already knew the ways of the Jews. And she says, what have I done to deserve so much kindness? I'm a foreigner. See, she just wanted to hear something from him. She just wanted reassurance. And I think that's okay. Sometimes I just need reassurance that it's okay that I'm here. That it's okay that I gather the leftovers. That I drink from your well. And Boaz says, yes, I know. But I know everything that you've done. That kind of sounds like Jesus knowing everything that we've done. We had a great weekend, and we had over 40 ladies gathering together, worshiping and studying and meditating and praying, and it was just beautiful. The Lord knew everything that we did. He brought people together that would have not otherwise had an opportunity to gather in that environment. May the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge, reward you fully for what you have done. Man, if I could only hear those words. Would that be something that would just sink down into your heart. Well, it's given me chills to even say it out loud, but just get under your skin and just feel how God, may the Lord, the God, reward you because you were kind to those, to your mother-in-law, who is now your mother, to everybody that you were around. You weren't showing disgust or bitterness for having to be out there searching for leftovers when everybody got the best of the best, and you're picking what is left. And she said, I hope I continue to please you. You've comforted me by speaking so kindly to me, even though I'm not one of your workers. Another lesson for us to learn. Speak kindly to those that are not as situated as you are. They need some encouragement. They need just a little word of kindness from you. And that might be all they need to get through the rest of their day. So they treat her kindly throughout all of this, and then we get ready for the really odd way of a proposal. And so now Naomi, when she finds out this is Boaz, oh my goodness, this is great. He's a relative. And she says, may the Lord bless him. He is showing kindness to us as well as to your dead husband. That man is one of our closest relatives. One of our family redeemers. Naomi seeing more of God's plan unfolding. Things work together for the good of those who love God. So, fast forwarding through this, running over into chapter 3, then Naomi gives Ruth instructions, and Ruth follows them to the T. And whenever Boaz realizes she's there with him in the threshing room, she identifies herself. Now he knows that who she is, because of course we talked about him seeing her in the field, but she says, I am your servant Ruth. Spread the corner of your covering over me, for you are my family redeemer. And so what does he say? Look at verse 11. Now don't worry about a thing, my daughter. Still an endearing term. I will do what's necessary, for everyone in town knows you are a virtuous woman. So he gives her grain, he gives her an offering, he gives her more than she needed to take home to Naomi while he worked out the details. See, he was a very smart and wealthy man, and he knew how things worked. He'd seen how things worked. He had a lot of experience. So he sends her home. He goes to the town's gate, took a seat there, brought witnesses with him so he could approach the closer redeemer of the family. And then after they made their agreement, and I am jumping through a whole bunch of nuggets here that I know you're going to find, but I got to get to the one I want to talk about is the one that was closest. Actually was going to say, yeah, I will take care of her, or of Naomi, but Boaz was wise, and he said, you'll need to marry Naomi to redeem all of this. And that wasn't really in the plan of this family member. Now Boaz didn't mention pretty little Ruth. He just mentioned her mother-in-law. And the guy said, you take her. I can't do that. That'll disrupt my whole family. That'll mess up the line of inheritance that I've got going on if I got to split it again. So he said, okay. So their agreement. Now this is what I want to get to, because this is so unique. Now, in those days, it was a custom in Israel for anyone transferring a right of purchase to remove his sandal and hand it to the other party. This publicly validated the transaction. So the other family member drew off his sandal as he said to Boaz, "You buy the land." So this was a pledge. This was a promise. And a sandal? Why in the world? A handshake? Trade cool rocks? Something like that? But your sandal? I mean, it can't be like there's a whole lot of sandals. You got to hand make everything. But in this case, back in those days, when they looked at the land, they had to walk over the land to see, get to the borders and look at it, and of course that you needed your sandals on to do that. He's not going to need this content. He's not going to need that because the guy says you take it, so he's not going to go survey the land. But yet, the sandals. You are standing in sandals. Whenever you have them on, it's to stand. And what I got from that is we stand in the promise. We are fully dressed in the armor of God, and we have our shoes of peace on, that we stand. And we stand on the promises. I am standing in the promises of God today, and if I take off my sandals, I am feeling everything that I am standing on because of the nerve endings in my feet. Just like Joshua, take off your sandal. You're standing on holy ground. And I think it was Joshua. We just read that. But I thought, oh, wow, remove your sandal. Remove your sandal. And so he lets everybody know they're his witnesses, because he's got plenty of them. He tells them they're all the elders, the important people. And with the land I have acquired Ruth, he speaks her name, the Moabite widow of Mahlon, to be my wife. This way, she can have a son to carry on his name and to inherit the family property. And so, the story goes on. Then we start getting to the cliff notes of it. Boaz took Ruth into his home. She became pregnant, gave birth to a son. Praise the Lord, the women told Naomi, who the Lord has now provided a redeemer for your family. And what a redeemer for our family that he provided. Look at the end, the genealogy of Ruth and Boaz. There was Perez, Hezron, Ram, on down. Well, and then Boaz, father of Obed. Obed, the father of Jesse. Jesse, the father of David. And we know the results there. Funny thing is, Ruth's grandson is David. You know who Orpah's grandson was? Goliath. They will come together. So God's hand is all over history. God works out things for a purpose, for a reason. Generation after generation, limited as we are in our lifetime, each one of us sees so little of what happens. And the process of history is not haphazard. There's a purpose to it all. We're walking through tough times in our daily life. Like just forgetting the leftovers. But we walk in obedience so we can live in the blessings of the promise, and we stand. There's a purpose to everything that goes on here. As we read through all of this, we see that even how people's names had a meaning to it. Amalek meant my God is king. Naomi meant pleasant or delightful. Malon, weak or sick. And Chilion, tired and dying. And here is Ruth. She's a Proverbs 31 woman that's walking in obedience, respectfully, and showing integrity and honor everywhere she went. What a lesson we can learn from Ruth. Jesus is our kinsman redeemer. And this is why he became a man. God might have sent an angel to save us, but the angel would not have been our kinsman redeemer. Only Jesus can be both kinsman and redeemer for mankind. And then let's jump real quick into John 4:43 through 54. Another great reading in John about Jesus. At the end of the 2 days, Jesus went on to Galilee. He himself had said that a prophet is not honored in his own hometown. Isn't that something that somebody can continue seeing you as you once were? Maybe it's not even you as you once were. They say, "Oh, I've heard about that family. I know where they lived." In whether it was a good or a bad place, there's a legacy there that people can't seem to detach from. And for Jesus, that was too bad, because he was there to teach them. The Galileans welcomed him, for they had been in Jerusalem at the Passover celebration and had seen everything that he did as he was there. Verse 48, I highlighted this one. Jesus asked, "Will you," which in the reading is plural, not just pointing to one specific person. He's looking at the group of people. "Will y'all," if he was in Oklahoma, he would say, "Will y'all never believe me unless y'all see miraculous signs and wonders?" He rebuked them because they've seen him do all of these things, but they just kept wanting to see more. It was like a magic show for them. Or they knew that if they followed him, they would be healed and they would be fed and they would have something to drink. An official pleaded, "Lord, come now before my little boy dies." And Jesus told him, "Go back home. Your son will live." And then look at that next statement. And the man believed what Jesus said and started home. So now then, whenever Jesus has told you you are healed, do you or do y'all believe? You saw it happen in the hospital whenever the healing was done. And it doesn't even have to be a miraculous healing. Well, every healing to me is like a major thing. But even if you have surgery and everything is controlled, how do you think all the muscle and tissue start weaving itself back together? That's God's hand. That's his plan for our body to heal itself because that's how he made it. I'm not saying we perform our own miracles by any means, but he made our bodies to be efficient. When something happens, you cut your finger and it heals. God made your body to be that way. Jesus tested his faith, forcing him to believe in Jesus' word alone. This man demonstrated the true faith by simply taking Jesus at his word. And the boy was healed, and he did not die. That I gave you the end of that story really quick because I am right at the end of my time today. But do you believe? If you study God's word, you lean on his promises, take your sandal off, you're standing on holy ground, and believe it's worth it. I will see you back at noon.